As we are in 2020, me and Adam are both recording this podcast over Zoom in our respective houses. Therefore, if you do hear a couple of little noises in the background or whatever, we both have lives, we both have pets and things that live around us. So just be aware of that. And hopefully one day we'll be able to meet up properly in a nice studio space. But until then, just please bear with us.
Welcome to the Encore Offstage podcast with me, Adam.
And me, Ben.
Welcome back, Ben. This is episode 2 of the podcast.
We made it.
We made it. Well, we've made it to episode 2. Let's put it like that.
Yeah,
so we got through a week, but we've had some good feedback from quite a few people.
I mean, our response has been amazing in terms of our listeners and all kinds of things. It's been so brilliant to be doing this.
And we lasted a week, which is good. Nobody's reported us for anything that we shouldn't have done.
No.
Which is great, which is always a good sign. And
always.
Yeah, so this week we've got a very special guest. We've got Matt Powell going to talk to us, who is a musical theatre director and producer. And we also have some of our other segments as well. So without any further ado, let's go to our first segment.
So every week we are going to be bringing a nice news story. We've decided to go down to just one story a week.
Nice news.
Nice.
Nice.
Comforting. Not
lovely news. Strokey news.
Yes, to avoid the obviously the obvious news at the moment. And Adam, you are bringing this week's story.
Am I?
Oh yes. What have you got for me?
So I go to What's on Stage for a lot of my theatre news.
We love What's on Stage.
We love What's on Stage. Please sponsor us, What's on Stage.
Please do.
And I noticed that there is a new concert coming out on the 7th of December at the Apollo.
Ooh.
And it's called the Roles Will Never Play concert.
Okay.
It's essentially a load of West End performers taking on singing roles they'd never normally be able to take on.
Okay.
And so there's all sorts of different people. There's people from Les Mis, Waitress, Hairspray. Everyone's talking about Jamie, Six, Joseph. All these different.
Anyone who is anybody basically will be.
Anybody who is anybody. Yeah. There's 2 paragraphs worth of performance.
Wow.
And also 2 graduates as a featured ensemble as well. So somebody from Mountview and Arts Ed. So they've given people a chance to do this.
Brilliant, that's really good.
And it just sort of thought, well, yeah, because I know there's a lot of concerts that's been done at the minute because it's good for social distancing. But it just made me think about roles that we want to do that we probably would never get a chance to do.
Ooh.
And again, a lot of concerts out there do that, and it's becoming more and more of a popular thing to do.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, Ben, what if you could choose a role or a couple of roles that you would love to do? What would you like to do? I mean, that you couldn't play normally, whether it's because of your age or your gender or your.
I mean, if we're thinking at the moment, there's definitely 2 roles that I would adore to play, but I can't. A, because of my age, but B, it's different gender, but often they can be played by men sometimes. It's 2 evil female roles, which I adore. It's Miss Trunchbull in Matilda and Miss Hannigan from Annie.
Yes, I get that.
Mostly because I adore both of their songs, their feature songs that they have. Miss Hannigan obviously has Easy Street and I can't remember the other one now, off the top of my head. And Miss Trunchbull's got Smell of Rebellion, which is one of the best songs in a musical, I would always argue, and The Hammer, which is amazing as well. Adore them both. So I would love to play them, and I was. They're just 2 roles that I think would be great fun just to mess about in, and they are 2 very, very good shows too. But hopefully that's more of a hopeful, optimistic. One day maybe I'll get to go into them.
So what about roles that you definitely can't play?
I can't think off the top of my head of roles that I definitely can't play. That I've got a burning desire to want to go and do.
Okay,
I'll pass it to you for a second. I'll have a think.
Well, one role that I'd love to play, just because of the the lore behind it, but also I'm a male and this role is female, and the vocal ability that is required for it is something that I could never do, and that's Elphaba from Wicked.
She was going to be up there for me as well. Yeah.
Elphaba, it's like some brilliant songs, and you need some awesome pipes to be able to sing Defying Gravity, and various other songs in the show as well. I'm trying to think of other
Well, I just suddenly, as soon as you said that, it flashed in the pad about me and Glinda. I just suddenly thought,
I'll be Elphaba, you be Glinda.
Patreon parody, perhaps, if we ever create one of those. Yeah, let's not do that. One day that might happen. Who knows?
Another role that I'd like to play, I would love to play, but again for my ability and also general physique, and that is either Jesus or Judas from Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh yeah.
Which is again one of those.
Yeah, you've just nicked mine. You just nicked mine now. Well done. No, I was thinking.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was thinking Jesus as well, or maybe Judas as well. Because again, for me, because singing ability, I've got nowhere near the ability for that. Anyone who's worked with me will know that. But Jesus and Judas and Joseph are both. To be fair, I have sung "Close Every Door." I did it with my singing teacher not too long ago, and it's surprisingly nice to reach. It's nice, but Gethsemane and any of Judas's really. His Suicide or even Heaven on Their Minds are just two really, really, really hard songs that, especially Gethsemane, I could never ever reach. But I agree with yours actually.
Yeah, I see. Just one of those. I just thought I saw it and I thought, hey, it's a nice little discussion topic.
When did you say the concert was, Adam?
It's on the 7th of December.
At the Apollo,
year, obviously. At the Apollo.
And was it just only could watch there, or were they streaming it? Did you see?
It will be socially distanced. So it's at the venue itself. So socially distanced, hand gel stations, etc., etc., etc.
All the fun stuff.
And all the. So and you can buy tickets now. They're on sale now. Brilliant. So what's on stage? Sponsor us, and we'll plug your show.
Yeah, we'll continue to use you and plug you as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. We'll use you and plug you as much as we can.
All we're doing at the moment.
But also have a look on there because there's lots of famous West End people on there. So you can go and think, what if so and so? I'm pretty sure that anybody out there would go, oh, I like them. Yeah. Let's go and see that.
To see them all together in performing in one concert, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, there's tons of people, and it's probably going to be a cracking night. There's probably going to be ensemble stuff, and a mix of different people. And again, just being able to see what they can and can't believe that again. And I'm sure Matt's going to talk about this in a bit about the things that the expectations of what you can and can't do in theatre. Yeah. So yeah, it'd be good to see that.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, on that note, it's time to move on to our next section. Now to our Q&A section of the podcast. This is the time for me and Adam to answer your listener questions. This week, we do have a question for one of our listeners, but please keep sending your questions in via both our social channels, or you can send us an email at encoreoffstagepod@gmail.com. Now, today's question comes from a different Matt, who sent it in via our Instagram. And of course, you can follow us on our Instagram at Encore Offstage Pod. Now, Matt asks, Adam, what did we miss most about theatre in lockdown?
Oh boy!
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
We were both had shows lined up we were meant to be working on that both being postponed or cancelled. So it's
this
year a bit later, I think.
Yeah, this year's been an odd one because, rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people thought that by summer everything would be a lot better.
Yeah.
And because there's no real plan and no idea what's going on, no one can plan anything. No. So there's not even a case of going, oh, well, it's like a lot of shows that have been rescheduled are having to reschedule again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is understandable. But even so, a lot of them are rescheduling for 2 years' time. And for me, one of the things I've missed a couple of things about theatre this year. first of all is being able to support friends and being able to see different shows that I wouldn't normally have seen. But the other major thing is actually rehearsing and doing something.
Absolutely.
Because we as performers, we as artists, darling,
Yes.
we thrive on the social contact, you know. And but seriously, we need some of that social contact. During this whole time, during lockdown, we weren't even able to see each other. You know, weren't able to go and see friends. Then, of course, that happened. But of course, the way that it's all happened, I mean, a lot of people think very differently about the arts compared to sports, compared to businesses. And now we're in a state at this part of the year where professional theatre is starting to come back. Again, social distance. And so professionals are able to come back and do shows and perform.
Which is brilliant.
Which is great.
However,
as amateur performers, we have lost out on a hobby whilst we've been going through lockdown. And admittedly, there's two arguments. And we both see it. We both see it from both sides. There's the argument of we need to stay safe, we need to do what we can, and then there's the other argument of we want to do what we enjoy doing
and what we love. And for some of us, what are amateur theatre can almost be a job, and for some people that as well, missing out on a job and missing out on possibly that income as well has been quite worrying.
Exactly. And for me, it's rehearsing, it's directing, it's being able to do something that involves seeing friends and just creating something. That's one of the main things I've missed about it is being able to see people go out for the night and just do something we enjoy doing and making something with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's very similar for me. I mean, I was quite fortunate in the fact that I was making my directorial debut.
You, darling.
I was assistant directing a show.
Break out the champers.
Absolutely. And I'd managed to get that done just before lockdown. We performed in early March, very, very early March. So it was before any guidance was released. So we managed to do it and we did it safely. And that was really important for me because I've been working on that show since about October time, and I'd worked with one of the nicest groups of people you can imagine working with, and getting to a fantastic cast. And that show was done, that was ticked off, and then about 2 weeks later was when the lockdown was announced. Mm-hmm. So I got that out of the way, which was really nice. So I was quite fortunate in that respect. But then obviously I had we both had a musical we were both doing. You were directing, I was in, cancelled, which was I think devastating for everybody who was working on that, because that was such a fantastic production.
It was brilliant. It was going ever so well.
It was.
and we can both say from this point of view that you just stop and you just have, at the time we had the hope that, okay, give it a couple of months and we'll be fine to carry on.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
And it just didn't happen.
No,
because we ended up putting it off to September. We couldn't do it in September. It's now near the end of October, and nobody knows any the wiser. People can't risk going to rehearsals because they don't know whether they're allowed to or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just keeping everybody safe it's really important, and knowing the risks and things. And it's going to be a fabulous day when everyone can get back into some sort of space, and that is what. And again, I'll keep saying this, but I again have been incredibly lucky to be doing drama and education, which means that I get to continue performing. So I have a performance coming up in 2 weeks' time. I mean, it's only part of my A level, but I'm still in a theatre. We work as there's three of us. We work together really closely. We socially distance in rehearsals, and then when we need to come together, we are a bubble, so we're allowed to do that now.
Yeah.
But I still get to do some form of performance. I still get to sort of flex those muscles, as it were. And also now doing this podcast allows us both to do some sort of theatre-y based thing.
Absolument, as the Japanese would say. It's one of those where, again, we get to do something a bit creative and a bit, we're actually talking about something we we enjoy.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that weirdly was one of the things that hit me in particular is for those who don't know, is Adam would, bless him, you'd often drop me home, wouldn't you, after many shows that we worked on together, and we would have this conversation that we are doing now, putting out for all you lot, but we'd have it in the car on the way home. And so obviously we both I missed out specifically on that during lockdown. I wasn't able to speak to you very much, other than just texting frequently. So this is really nice. This is a way of being able to recreate with you in particular, which is lovely.
And also, we've had, I'm sure you've had the same. You have friends that do theatre and have done it, and you during lockdown, you sort of send a message out saying, "How are you? Making sure you're okay." And a lot of people that in the same vein go, "Yeah, I'm just bored," because it's all right doing another hobby, but when the hobby that you do involves going out and seeing people and being in a room with other people. It's been really tough, and I know it's affected a lot of people's mental health as well, because one thing that people understand and don't understand, some people have varying understanding that is mental health. When you're able to do your hobby and able to relax, I mean, some people don't find it relaxing. Some people actually get stressed out performing. But when you do amateur theatre and you do rehearsals and you do performance, you love it, and it's that release, and it's that moment to go, I can just vent or do some. I can be somebody else for a bit.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that, it can be so traumatic. And I know a lot of people who have struggled. They've been in very difficult situations during lockdown. I'm not saying they've been unsafe, but I don't personally know anybody that's been unsafe. But at the same time, it's not been that avenue. There's no been that avenue to escape. And that's what I've missed about doing live theatre. I mean, okay, the shows that they stream online and think they're great. They're great. They're nice to watch. But you sit there and you go, can't wait till I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, for me, the biggest thing I've missed is the casts that you work with. You get, especially when you do amateur theatre, and you, like myself, I bounced around for a year in different roles, both backstage and on stage, and I got to work with such a diverse amount of people from all kinds of backgrounds, who were so lovely in their own ways. People you have in jokes with, people you get to you just love spending time with. So when you go on a Thursday, you go, oh, I've got a bad day, but tonight I get to go and spend some time with people that you grow to love over 6-8 months when you work on, especially on amateur shows, when you work with people for such a long period of time, and you work so closely with them, that you really get to, you create those lasting friendships that actually that is what is missing for me most, is the fact that the people that you get to meet, the relationships and the friendships that you create out of it, you don't get to A, create more, but B, maintain the ones that you already have made, because you're not doing shows with them. So I think for me, that's what I've missed most.
And obviously it's up to people's own circumstances as to whether they can risk going to rehearsals. It depends on the tier level that your area is in. I know some people are rehearsing, some people, and again, just all I would say is just be careful. Just be careful. And at the end of the day, for us people like us, it is a hobby. It is a hobby. You're not going to necessarily make tons of money out of it if you do it, and it's not worth the risk to people's health.
No.
And I would urge just to say, just if you're going to go to rehearsal, just plan and just go, do I need to be there? Do I need to be there at this current moment in time? Or is it possible to wait a couple of months or however long until I can do it safely and everything's going to be fine?
Absolutely.
And a lot of people out there are a lot younger than I am, and they've got their whole lives in front of them, and it's one of those things where you've got the time. It's a year. And in the whole grand scale, I am 36 this year.
You're not.
I am. Next week, in fact. I am next week.
Yes.
I am 36. So birthday podcast next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. But next week, I am 36, but also it's just been a year. It's all it's been. It's 365 days. However, 525,000.
Oh, no. Please don't put that in my head.
Okay.
No.
But that's how long it is. Okay.
It is.
It is a long time, but it's also, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a long time. Just look after yourselves. Sounds of it.
Thank you, Matt. Hopefully that had answered your question for you. And now it's time to move on to a different Matt. We are going to be talking to the amazing Matt Powell, and that's up next in our big discussion. Now it's time for our weekly big discussion. This is our time to perhaps explore a question from our listeners in more depth, a larger topic, or even an interview with a very special guest. And this week we have just that. So please welcome to the Encore Offstage podcast, theatre director and producer of musical theatre, Matt Powell.
Hey.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm grand.
Good.
It's lovely to virtually be here. I don't think it ever doesn't get weird, this Zoom life at all.
Don't worry, my friend. This is the way that things are at the moment. So this is one of the reasons we did this podcast, was to talk to people like yourself and just to have a chat and get to know new people. So Matt, you and I know each other. We've known each other for a while now.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah,
we could say that. But for people like Ben and people out there who don't know who you are, just give us a little bit of a brief background as to you.
Oh,
don't go from like the age of 1 or anything.
Yeah,
like
well, it was
Just go back
1996, and
young.
So
Okay, carry on.
my theatre existence, I've been directing and producing predominantly musical theatre since 2014, I think it was. And
what was that, Matt? Was it a particular show?
I did Avenue Q. So 17 years old, I directed Avenue Q, which was great fun. It's a bit of a bonkers show, and that was lovely to do. And then sort of that then spanned into doing a lot of different community and youth theatre productions, which is how I know your lovely self, from being directed by
Not
you,
as a
directing
youth.
you.
This is true. This is what I just put out there. Not as a youth.
Yeah, not as a youth.
Gone. Long gone.
Oh yeah, no, your rendition in those youth productions was perfect, Adam. Isn't it?
Well, all I needed was the shorts and to shave the beard. That was
absolutely, youthful demure. But yeah, so that's what my life was for quite a while, and then I moved to London to do a degree at Central in performance art. Through that, met some incredible people, and now, I mean, this year, whilst it's been a bit of a bonkers year for theatre, I've done a lot of digital work, from song cycles to festivals, to at the moment quite a lot of radio theatre and all sorts of weird different innovations, because sadly we can't be making too much live theatre at the moment, so
not a minute. No,
finding nice new ways to do stuff has been quite a joy. I think that's me.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned quite a few things there, which we're going to get into, and we've got some questions from listeners already.
Nice.
Which, to say this is our second podcast is
Yeah,
great.
rock and roll.
But I'm going to ask you just a couple. First of all, and this is a question that I know a lot of people out there have. What's the difference between a director and a producer?
So the way I kind of see it, there is an overlap in terms of creativity. Directing is having overall control of the structure, the narrative, what we're doing with the piece of theatre. The producer comes in on a slightly more administrative side, so budget handling, contract negotiation, making all of the little pieces come together. I say I'm both because for most of my career I've had to do both just out of a necessity, and there has been that overlap. But I would say producing nowadays definitely has a creative input as well, because if a director wants something incredibly elaborate, you then have to facilitate maybe something slightly cheaper, and things like that, as opposed to that whilst the director, again, might have a certain sale input on certain people to use and things like that. So there's always a nice overlap between the two.
So would you say that a director and producer go hand in hand, but whilst a director works mainly with the actual visionary side of things, and the producer does as well to some extent, but the producer the director has to answer to the producer in terms of what they can and can't do?
To some extent, yes yes and no. I think that the parameters of a budget are terribly horrifying sometimes, and having been in both shoes sometimes, a few close friends will know I then have no self-control. I think a good director-producer relationship is it's about sort of supporting one another to bring a certain vision and overall end game for. Like when I'm looking for works at the moment, I'm looking for work that excites me as an individual. So, for example, I'm very into my LGBTQ plus narratives and representations. So when someone comes to me with something like that, I'm like, yes, that is something I want to see happen. Like it's kind of a dream job because you get to choose the sort of things you want to watch or want to listen to, which is rather nice.
Brilliant.
But I'd say a director, I've been recently pitching a few projects to producers where I've been going, this is something I want to make as an individual creative. And that, yeah, that's probably the bigger distinction. A lot of leaning on one another, but
fab. That sounds like a perfect mix for you, Matt, actually, because let's go back to before you moved to London. All right. So you were a youth, as it were. You was a youth. One of the down with the kids in it.
Down with the kids.
That's my exposition there. Tell us a little bit about how you got started. What drove you to do it? What was it? Was it particularly musical theatre? Was it just theatre in general?
I think it was definitely musical theatre. I grew up on a lot of soundtracks. My mum and dad took me to see quite a lot of musical theatre. I then joined places like Centre Stage and Stagecoach, fantastic sort of skill learning opportunities within theatre, and it was all
with Centre Stage. Was that like a theatre academy type thing?
It was, yeah. It's an amazing youth theatre school that's still running today, and they would do productions, they would do showcases and things like that as well. So that's probably really is where my taste for it came to life. And in terms of like then going into directing and producing, it really did come out of a little bit of boredom. We saw Avenue Q was available. We knew that no Amdram company was probably going to do Avenue Q because it's a very small cast and it's a little bit naughty. So it's
you mean like the Pope is a little bit Catholic?
Yeah, the Pope is a little bit Catholic. So it's a good little metaphor to sum up what Avenue Q is. But it's literally over the summer holidays, out of boredom, I got the rights and then all of a sudden was doing it, and I've had no formal training really until Central. It's just been out of a necessity of doing and learning through that, which I'm a big believer. Doing stuff as opposed to sitting and reading about it for years and years is a really productive way of learning and making things happen. Because
when you did that, what was the biggest draw to that? Was it what did you find the most challenging thing about that?
The biggest draw to it, I think, was about making a community and like working with people to create a shared end product, because that's what I love about theatre. You create these beautiful little families of people all around a shared common goal to make an incredible show, production, an amazing end product. I think the biggest challenge sometimes can be dealing with sort of the stresses and balance that can come with that. And theatre is all encompassing. You can feel like it's relentless and you never really get a break because your brain is always thinking about it. And especially if you're wearing multiple hats in terms of production role, you can end up really sort of like not stopping at all. There have been many ridiculously late nights and things like that. And that sometimes was the challenge, is then the line between personal life and professional life can blur quite quickly because you're in such a microcosm of a world that you literally all you're doing is living and breathing a show for a while with the same people and everything like that. And I'd say that's often can be the big challenge, is knowing when to breathe from it all. Something still struggle with today, but you find ways with it. And I've been very lucky that in all the projects I've done, I've worked with really wonderful and supportive people that have made that a lot easier.
He has to say that because I've done some of his productions.
Except Adam Guest. Adam Guest.
Thanks, pal. Thanks. Thanks, pal. Moving swiftly on. What drew you to London? The reason I ask is because it sounds like you already had a big community up here. You had a big skill set and you had all your things going for you up here, there was obviously a reason you wanted to go to London. So I want to know more about that.
Definitely, yeah. It was about taking the next step, because I'm incredibly proud of everything I did in Derby and the relationship I still keep to those areas. And basically, I was then wanting to look at what's next. I'm always slightly one foot in the future with where things are going. And I basically was knocking on a lot of doors, trying for lots of funding and stuff like that, and getting pushed away because I had no formal education and professional experience. And I always get a little bit annoyed by that, because I think the traditional routes of going into a career are very, I don't know, I think they're starting to become a bit outdated and are being refreshed. And as well, no career track is the same as anyone else. So it was a bit strange that already those limits were put there.
Do you think there's like a stigma or a belief behind the traditional ways into theatre? Is that what you mean?
I think so. I think if this year's taught us anything as well, there are other ways of going about making things happen and collaborations happen and stuff. But it was literally, I was applying for arts admin jobs, as I had a HR job alongside doing all of this stuff, but I wanted to make it my career. And I wouldn't be seen because there was no degree. There was lots of things that weren't ticked, but whilst I could arguably make quite a lot of equivalent experience, I'd like, by the time I'd come to London, I think I directed 12 shows and had run a company for 4 years. So I was a little bit like, oh, do we have to?
Do I have to? Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. But I think it is interesting, especially now, there is definitely some shifts in the ways people are building their careers. But I, at that moment, felt a need to have some connection and a little bit of training. Whilst my degree didn't teach me how to be a director or a producer, it was a performance art course. It opened a lot of doors to assist directors and to learn through moderation and stuff like that, which was super beneficial.
Performance art course, for those, I mean, for some of us like myself, what does, at the risk of sounding, very, very daft, what is performance art? What's the difference between that and directing and traditional theatre?
Not daft at all, because I mean, I've done a 3-year degree in it, and sometimes I even ask myself that question. What drew me, so the course itself basically accommodated for all different types of practice. So I had people like me who were quite, I would argue, traditional in terms of my interest in musical theatre, director and producer. You had incredible movement and dance students. You had people that were live artists doing some incredibly experimental stuff, which I've seen an awful lot of different things within my time in the course, and it's very hard to just define it as one thing. But that was the good thing that it taught you. It taught that performance is so much more than a proscenium arch theatre and loads of people smiling and tap dancing. It's cool. It was a real broad insight into different ways of working. And we did all sorts of projects, from a text module where we looked at how we write ourselves in performance. There's a lot of identity driven practice, the opportunity to try things like queer performance and drag. We did immersive stuff. We've done all sorts of crazy stuff. And like, actually looking back at the 3 years, it's been interesting to see how very small moments with different art practices have really like influenced and changed you. Because whilst I've come out still a director and producer of musical theatre, it's made my awareness of representation issues and things like that a lot broader. And
I was just going to ask you that question. As doing that sort of study, do you think that helped you as a director and a producer? And do you think that an actor and a performer would get the same out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the course opens your eyes, and in terms of ethics and sort of the standards that we should be working by, they're there to shape you as the next generation of theatre makers and performers in some way. And a part of that training has to give you that insight and understanding. So like, I know as a producer, my responsibility to authentic storytelling and making sure that both on and off stage, our stages reflect the story that we're telling, which is just vital and goes without saying. Sadly, to some people, we still have to shout it from the rooftops, but hey, that's life. And That's definitely what it taught me. I would say if anyone wants to be an actor, you should pursue a formal acting course, as opposed to something that is a bit more theoretical, just because I work for an MA in music theatre, and the training is incredibly different because obviously you are learning a skill set and a craft as opposed to kind of general practice. So but from what I understand from those courses, you still get quite a worldly view and an insight, because these drama schools have an immense array of diverse students from different places, and you start to learn about all different cultures and lifestyles and things like that. And also being in London as well, you come across so many incredible communities.
Yeah, I'll bet. I mean, what's your experience? I mean, you're a Midlands boy, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm very much a Midlands boy. Yeah.
And how did you find it when you moved to London? Was it a big culture shock, or?
It was strange. Like whenever I come home has like a weird ghostliness to it, because Derby doesn't feel like it ever changes. But London, it's just a different thing. And I have a few moments even now, like if I'm walking around from somewhere and I'm like, oh, there's the London Eye, oh, that's the Shard and stuff like that. Like you suddenly feel very small in quite a big place, and you encounter a lot of different people so quickly and easily. It's kind of, I mean, it's a bit of a shame that we sort of got robbed of our last term, because me and my friends were planning to really just make the most of being students in London, just because when you're doing a theatre degree, you don't have much time to do that sort of stuff.
I'll bet.
So we were quite looking forward to that. And obviously COVID stopped us having any sort of social life. And it's, it was a bit of a shock to the system at first, but incredibly interesting how quickly it can feel like home, and you find your space, your community, and your places, especially, happens quite quickly.
Fab. So just obviously we've talked a lot about your past, and what I want to do is I also want to ask you about what you're working on. And obviously in the latest, you mentioned was it soundscapes and music, song cycles?
Yeah, just
these are all words that you just throw out. It's like saying banana unicorn. You know, it's like
working on a lot of banana unicorns.
Well, who doesn't? But just explain a little bit more about some of the projects you're into. That sounds wrong. Some of the projects you're working on, and tell people about what that involves.
Yeah, so this year I've sort of made quite a commitment to new musical theatre, which comes from a great collaborator and friend of mine, Adam Lenson, who's really inspired that spark, who I've worked with closely for over a year now. But mainly at the moment, as I say, with theatre shut, it's very difficult to sort of see a live existence. So what I've been doing with quite a few new musicals is looking at ways we can get them out there. A few things I've done, sort of inspired by the music videos of Beyonce and Lady Gaga, who sort of create visual EPs, visual albums. It's quite a new thing, but where the music videos are connected and tell a narrative and a story. We did, in August, we did a new musical called Snowflake, which is a contemporary, quite funny story about identity in the 21st century. And we made a visual EP of that, where like it was 4 music videos that all connected, mostly produced remotely, which was fantastic. And then we did, I've got coming out in a couple of weeks, Make Me Infamous, which is a radio theatre musical, where it's a 2-hour full cast, full production audio adventure, basically, and with all of the music, all of the scenes, everything like that. And
so like an audio drama type
yeah,
thing,
a bit like an audio drama. It's
Ah.
about supervillains and superheroes, and it's incredibly fun.
Okay.
Very fun and silly. So that's coming out on the 2nd or the 3rd of November. In fact, I'm just in the final edit of that this weekend, which is very exciting. But it's at the moment, it's about getting those stories out there, and a lot of new musicals tend to fall at the workshop hurdle. You have to fundraise so much money to get a show into workshop. It's ridiculous how much time and also like how much free labor goes into doing it. I've known of Snowflake for 2 years, and I know the writer has just been writing it and rewriting it and testing little bits here and there, and we're now in this position of putting it out there. The issue is, how do you put stuff out there in a world where there are no showcases, where theatres are closed? But actually, the online stages that we have are huge, and like you can get a massive audience and following happen. Be More Chill's an amazing example of that. Be More Chill had an okay off-Broadway run. It then released an album that went viral, and that's how it got to Broadway. That's how it got to the West End. Like, there are so many like benefits in investing time into doing stuff a little bit differently before we plunge into doing a full-blown production of something. I think that's why I'm at the moment making quite a commitment to doing just digital work. And yeah, we'll probably be continue to do so even when we can be making real world theatre. Is there something quite amazing about the form?
So we've had an amazing response from our listeners when we announced last week that you're joining us. So we've got a big long list of listener questions that we're going to get into, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
So Chris asks a really interesting question. What was your favourite show to produce / direct? And are there any shows that you want to produce? Have you got like a list that you want to get into one day?
Oh, that it's so hard to pinpoint a favourite. That's tricky. I've loved everything I've done. The shows that stay with me, Sweeney Todd was the hardest project I've done, but was deeply rewarding and was incredibly proud of doing that. I'd also say like Bear holds an interesting like memory to me as well. There are quite a lot of shows. It's hard to pick a favorite because I have loved all of them, but I think I would say Sweeney Todd holds like the strongest like memory and sense of achievement, because that was bonkers. That and American Idiot last year was phenomenal. That was hard work, but it was incredible hard work just because I was a bit mad and set myself some ridiculous goals and boundaries with the design of it all and the video and stuff. But yes, that was great. In terms of shows I want to do, I'm really interested in new work. I would love to one day direct Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is a fantastic gig musical, and something else. I also like want to do some really weird adaptations of revivals. So I was supposed to do Rent this year, and I would really like to do my very crazy Ivo Van Hove inspired production of Rent. That would have been bonkers, but brilliant, I'm sure.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
We've
got loads from Lucy here, who asks, what theatrical work currently out there do you feel best represents and even celebrates the LGBTQ plus community? And do you have a personal favourite?
Good question. There's some amazing work coming to life. There's a musical called The Phase, which is written by a friend of mine and their collaborator, that is coming together, but there's quite a bit of it online already. Self-promotion, I did a whole season of LGBTQ plus work for Pride, so you can watch all of that. It was called MT Pride. In terms of something I've seen recently, the Boys in the Band film adaptation on Netflix is a harrowing sort of adaptation of a 1970s play that still feels quite relevant, and an amazing Netflix series called Pose as well, which is by Ryan Murphy and is deeply moving about the ballroom culture in New York City. Those are obviously Netflix and not theatre, but it's been a while since I've seen any like incredibly queer work in a theatre just because of the world at the moment. But something that's really up and coming that I recommend people listen out for is The Phase. They're on all the social medias and there's some great work already out there by them.
Brilliant. We've got another question here. It says, what can people do as a community to increase queer representation in the arts? That's quite a meaty question.
That is a meaty one. I've written 10,000 words on it, so we could be here all day. The thing I find nowadays is our entire world is made up of so many beautiful people, and sadly our stages are only just getting there with reflecting that. And the thing about queerness is it will always revolve. Like what queer meant 10 years ago isn't what queer means now, and what queer will mean in 10 years' time won't be like what queer is today. So it's about having a consistent awareness about what stories we should be telling and the sort of identities and people that we should be showcasing on those stages. It's a very layered and sticky problem. Being unapologetic about who you are is vital, and having respect for people who are is really important. Things like putting your pronouns in your bio or when you're introducing yourself, that can be just a really good comfort for all sorts of queer people within a space. And also being open to shaking things up. Like if we're doing a revival of a musical, can we make that story queer? Can we shift something by casting a stereotypical male role as a female role, or vice versa? Or can we just destroy the binary altogether and make whatever we want to make? I think as well, it's important to address what representations are in shows that already exist. So shows like Bear and Rent are groundbreaking in terms of storytelling. But if we're just telling those stories today, we should be thinking, well, how are we representing the queer experience today with that? Or are we making this piece entirely a historical piece? We should ask ourselves, should we be readdressing the representation to today, or should we be making it purely a historical piece and being very clear with the design aesthetic and the era that we're in? Just because quite a lot of LGBTQ stories that exist at the moment can have quite a negative ending. They can end in death or like rejection and things like that. And it's important to make sure that we're being respectful to that, and also making sure there's a very decent aftercare that comes both for the audience and for the people involved, so that they feel safe and held within that space.
Next question is, have you ever faced any challenges within the theatre community for being queer or being very open with your queer representation? And if you did, how did you overcome that?
I've been very lucky with my experience. The only time I've had a challenge was I was doing a solo piece of queer theatre and I ended up cancelling its run because I didn't feel personally comfortable telling the story at that moment. I think when we bring our identity in the room, it can be scary. It can be very difficult to know how open to be and all of that, but the only way that we can shift that is by being ourselves and being authentic within those spaces, and that is scary, and we may come across people judging us for that. Some people say to me that, oh, when you talk professionally you sound so gay, and I'm like, well, no, I just sound like me, and I don't hugely appreciate when people put a label like that onto me, because I am just Matt Powell, and I'm very proud to be a queer person who will say that and shout that from the rooftops forever. But I think the main thing is, if you're being authentic to yourself, you don't own any responsibility to no one. And if people are giving you any rubbish for you feeling authentically you should just zone them out. There should be no need for you to in any way take on board anyone else's insecurity. Often it comes from a place of insecurity, and you can point that person to great resources that might educate, or if they're willing to listen, see if they'll listen. But RuPaul says some great stuff, and whilst RuPaul is a problematic person, like if they aren't paying your bills, then pay them no mind. So you can, just if you're being authentically you, that's at the end of the day the most important thing about it, and people will love you for who you are. Don't feel like you're having to adapt how you are in a certain space or place just to fit in with them. I'll give one great example that's not theatre related. I was a receptionist at Land Rover for 3 weeks. It lasted 3 weeks for a reason, because that is a very masculine environment and I felt incredibly uncomfortable. So also, if you're uncomfortable in the situation, you have the authority to remove yourself from it.
Well said, Matt. Well said.
Yeah, brilliant.
Really good. I think it's important that people out there know that. I think there's a stereotype with theatre. Not only that with it being sort of like a showy profession, but also there seems to be a tendency for people to think that men involved in theatre have to be, you know, gay, bisexual, whatever. And it's a big stereo. And we all know of people, men who are straight, that, you know, that are involved in theatre and have been for many, many years, but still get that stigma attached to them.
I know, it's horrifying that a stigma can still exist, and it's one that stems a lot deeper into issues around toxic masculinity or men not being comfortable sharing their emotions or expressing in a certain way. And it's horrible. And to see that, and again, like the way we can make those shifts is by being welcoming in a space and all of us being open to that, and also not putting a label on someone just because they like singing or dancing. Like,
exactly,
you know, it really is. Sorry,
it's a common. Oh, sorry. I'm just saying it's a common environment for everybody. So why not, rather than look for the differences in everybody, look for the things that you actually find familiar in other people and work on that, rather than actually trying to find things to isolate or to, you know. But again, if you like theatre, this is one of the reasons we started the podcast, was so that people around could have a listen to something that was a common interest to people, and also have a listen to people just chatting, and talk about stuff, and this is the thing, and it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you like theatre, you can get involved in theatre.
Definitely, and it's just like, thanks for making this platform and space available, because I think, it's, as I said earlier, we make these little families and spaces that are for everyone and should facilitate everyone in a nice way. And I like to hope that the spaces and places that we make are all welcoming and all of that. I think people's own microaggressions are the things we should interrogate. And if we are thinking a certain thing or saying something, or we hear someone say something, we should challenge them on it and then interrogate where that's coming from, because often it is coming from a place of lack of knowledge or insecurity or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're welcome for the platform. You wait till you get the bill.
Oh gosh, okay.
Seriously though, no, it's, again, anybody that's got any questions or any issues, what's the email address, Ben?
EncoreOffstagePod@gmail.com.
Well done. It's almost like
Nice.
he's trained, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Well, I know Ben's asked you some questions, and I asked you some questions earlier, but I have some questions for you. Now, this is a fun segment, right, that I'm going to do with every. So don't worry, you're not on your own, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions, and you have to answer as quickly as you possibly can.
Okay.
Okay. Just for these are some would you rather questions.
Okay. Do I need to grab a glass of wine or something? Or...
No, you're all right. You're okay. It's fine. So, are you ready? I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
Go for it.
Okay. So this is a fun segment. So this is a would you rather. So first of all, would you rather have a 1-minute conversation with your past self or your future self?
Past self.
And why is that?
I just remind myself to, like, it's okay to make a few mistakes, and also warn myself of a few mistakes that are going to happen.
Okay, fair enough.
Personal and professional.
I like it. Would you rather paint a wall with your face or your knees?
Knees, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Would you rather have a cat with a human face or a dog with human hands for paws?
Oh gosh, that's just nightmare fuel. I mean, I have like a secret love for the musical Cats, so I'll go for the Cats one.
Okay, so Matt Powell out there would rather have a cat with a human face.
Oh,
okay,
gosh. Yeah, okay.
Would you rather get £10,000 now, or find a penny whenever you reach into your pocket?
£10,000 now could produce some incredible new theatre if someone gave me 10 grand.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question, I think this is 5. I can't remember. I lost count. Can't be honest. Would you rather? This is a deep one, Matt. You need to think about this one. Okay. Would you rather have a 10-inch long belly button that swayed to music, or accordions for legs?
Oh, I'm gonna go accordions for legs.
Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah, it's
wouldn't
quite
really.
fun. That is.
Yeah, every time you, I see. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
this was the really intense part of
That
the
is,
segment,
you know,
obviously.
yeah, I've learned a lot about myself.
and some interesting answers.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Matt. You really opened my eyes to some in-depth parts of you
Of
that
course.
I'm sure people out there really wanted to know.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone really wants to know that I'd rather paint a wall with my knee than my face. Yeah,
Yeah, who wouldn't?
definitely.
Yeah, interesting.
That's the audience we've got, I think.
At the minute.
You get some weird messages later, aren't they? Great. Well, I mean, all of my stuff can be found at MP Theatricals. That's my production company. So you can visit www.mptheatricals.co.uk, where you'll find a plethora of digital performances and a lot of info on up and coming work. I can't say too much because things are very fluid at the moment, but there's some exciting new live streams happening soon, some really cool new performances as well. Also on my Twitter at Matt Powellicus, I promote an awful lot of amazing new work. Matt Powell wasn't available, so I went for something a bit.
Of course it wasn't. So you went with Matt Powellicus.
I know, because I am so cool. That's just a massive nerd, and that comes from Doctor Who.
I also noticed you've used a few buzzwords there, Matt, like plethora and live stream and work.
I know.
I like it. It's good. I like it. Yes, really good. Which in the theatre world isn't very often used.
I know.
So it's good. I like it. Very good. I'm very impressed. I think I'll go and visit and just sit and look at the webpage for about 5 minutes and not change it and just see what happens to me.
Yeah.
Does it have a psychological effect on people, or is it
people are deeply moved by this, even a couple of words on the
website. Just the homepage.
Just the homepage. You're like, oh my gosh, this is.
So if I suffer like emotional trauma by going to your website,
oh no, you'll be emotionally uplifted. I mean,
okay, that was excellent. So go to MP Theatricals and be emotionally uplifted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's what we need
Excellent.
right now.
Yep.
So I've got my first radio theatre musical. So an audio book, whatever we call it. We're not entirely sure, but it's a thing. It's a full cast, 2 hours of musical goodness. A really uplifting and fun story about supervillains and superheroes. It's called Make Me Infamous. It's by Jude Taylor, an incredible young writer. And you can pre-order that now at a reduced price. And that will be out for you to keep forever and ever from the 2nd of November.
Nice.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So it sounds like you're really keeping busy, Matt, which is great.
Yeah. It's my relentless I've got to stay busy attitude, to be fair. So
must keep busy.
So Matt, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It's been amazing to have you on.
Oh,
thank you, Matt. Much appreciated. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's lovely to see.
It is indeed. And good luck with everything that you're doing.
Great. Thank you.
And remember, everybody out there listening, if you want to follow anything that Matt's doing, we've got the social media and everything that we're going to share via our different links. But I'm sure, Matt, if people are interested and want to get in touch, they can do. Is that right?
Of course, yeah. I'm always up for a Zoom coffee or a glass of vino.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds about right for you from what I remember of you. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Much appreciated.
No, thank you both so much. It's been a joy.
Adam, we did it again. We made it through another week.
Have we? We did it in inverted commas.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yes.
But we've got through it. That's the main thing. So that's the end of episode 2. But no, thank you, Ben, for your time this week, and thank you to Matt.
Yes, thank you, Matt, for coming on and being our very, very first guest.
Make sure you send your questions and keep them coming into us. We've got our various social media streams. We've got Facebook, so the Book of Face. We have Twitter. We have Instagram. We have YouTube.
We do.
We also have our email address, which is
Encore Offstage Pod @gmail.com.
You're very well trained.
Thank you. I know.
And always, if you've got any questions or you've got any news items you've got for us that you want us to mention,
basically send us content. We need content.
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah. We can't do this on our own. Help us. But other than that,
No,
we've had a great time
we
this week,
have.
and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next
Yeah.
week.
Thank you so much for listening, as always, and we'll both be here. Oh,
will.
next week, because you, Adam, need to go back in the podcast cupboard, and then we will unleash Adam.
Okay, I'm going back in the cupboard.
Bye, Adam.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Just go ahead and go.
Bye. There we go. He's locked away. Cheers for listening. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Encore Offstage podcast. If you fancy, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Encore Offstage Pod.
We also have a YouTube channel where we upload a video version of this podcast, and that's also at the Encore Offstage podcast. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your podcast app of choice.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll both be back next week. The Encore Offstage podcast is produced by Ben Bradley and Adam Guest. It is edited by Jack SPOORS and Ben Bradley.